Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie. I am the Senior Organizing Manager here at Fair Vote Washington, and I am delighted to welcome you to our June roadmap, Ranked Choice Voting in Action, this month focusing on disability advocacy. As many of you know, there have been a lot of comments from our Secretary of State, our Washington Secretary of State, Steve Hobbs, claiming that ranked choice voting might be too difficult for those with intellectual disabilities. And we're really excited to have a conversation um, about this topic and hear from experts and advocates in the field. Tonight, you will first hear from our newest organizer, Natalie Morgan. I'll bring them on in just a moment. And then we will bring on our panel so you can all hear from them and their wisdom and experience. Then there will be an opportunity for you all to ask our panel questions, and then we'll move right along. So we're really delighted to have you. As usual, we have a Q&A on the screen. We don't have an active chat, but go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A throughout the entire program. It does not, you don't have to wait until later. We're excited to have you. All right, and with that, I'm going to bring on our organizer, Natalie Morgan. Here you go.
Here I am. Yeah, my name is Natalie Morgan. I use she, they pronouns. I'm very excited to be here as an organizer for Fair Vote Washington. I am born and raised in Washington State. I have a lot of love for this area. And earlier I heard everyone talking about their dogs. So I will say I'm a cat mom. Sorry, guys, or you're whatever, I do have a beautiful little boy of my own. But, my history here, just really quickly, I went to Central Washington University, have a degree in sociology and a minor in women and gender studies. Always been interested in the realm of social justice and all that, but I finally found my way firmly into the nonprofit world after doing some fundraising here recently with various nonprofits, but also working, nuclear power plants and international research labs. So been all over the place, met all kinds of folks. I love people. Anytime you ever want to reach out to me, I'd be so happy to hear from anyone. And really glad to be here, y'all, and looking forward to this meeting and hearing from all of your perspectives. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie. Really glad to have you on our team. And next, I am going to bring up, there we go. Next, I'm going to bring on Nilu Jenks, who is our political director. Welcome, Nilu.
Hi all, I'm Nilu Jenks, who's asking me to unmute myself. And I'm excited to be here and introduce our guest this evening to have this conversation that has been opened up by our Secretary of State in Washington, Steve Hobbs. I'm going to throw out also that I am a dog mom. My dog is Artemis, but I also am a cat mom. I have Topaz and Sierra, and I'm going to start introducing our panelists, and I'm really excited to share them with you tonight. First is Representative Darya Farivar, who is my representative, as well as Carrie's in the 46th district. She is a strong representative for disability rights. And as an example, she's the champion of the Nothing About Us Without Us Act, which has been driven by the disability rights community and addresses the crucial need for including individuals with direct lived experience in shaping policies that directly impact them. She's also a super dog mom to Cha-Cha, also known as Dragon. Representative Farivar, we're excited to have you here this evening. As we know, we should be turning to people from the disability community and advocates instead of speaking over them. So thank you for joining us. I am going to invite also, we'll give you time to all introduce yourself in a bit. Next is Sunshine Cheng, who is a disability advocate. She's an autistic advocate and public policy liaison at Disability Rights Washington, where she supports the organization's goals in public policy and voting advocacy. She just graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in law, societies, and justice and disability studies, and in her free time enjoys playing with her retired service dog, Suba. Thank you for joining us, Sunshine, because we, again, think it's important for ranked choice voting advocates to hear directly from communities impacted by any change themselves. And so we know a lot of people have signed up tonight, so welcome. I hope you're looking forward to this conversation. And finally, Gabriela Mendoza, who is coming from our car because she has is really dedicated, is on the move. Gabriela, thank you so much for being here. She's the executive director and co-founder of Hispanic Disability Support in Southwest Washington, Pasitos Gigantes. She's a council member for Washington State Developmental Disability Council and has served a 2-year term as co-chair, having been appointed by Governor Inslee 3 times since 2018. She's also on an advisory board member for development disabilities in Clark County and an advocate for immigrants and refugees at both the state and national level. And last but not least, she's the proud mom of 2 young adults. The youngest is on the autism spectrum disorder. Thank you, Gabriela, for joining us. Again, we appreciate all 3 of you because we want to include advocates and people with lived experiences in helping us as we work to make sure any voting changes are accessible to all communities. So thank you for partnering with us in this work and being here tonight. So I'm going to give you each time to talk a little bit about yourself or your organization and how you contribute to its impact. So do maybe start in the order that I introduced you. Representative Farivar, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you for having me here tonight. I guess I'm not going to talk about my organization because I'm here in my elected capacity, but I have spent my entire career advocating for folks with disabilities, and not just for them, but in partnership, working together with folks to make sure that their voices are heard and are front and centered. And you know, in advocacy work, the most basic fundamental form of that advocacy is in being able to cast your vote and being able to do so in an accessible way. And myself and Sunshine have worked on this pretty significantly over the last couple of years, and really excited to talk to you all about the work that we're going to be working on coming up to try and make sure that we can get RCV across the finish line. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Sunshine?
Thanks, Nilu. This is Sunshine, and thank you all for having me as well. I work at Disability Rights Washington, which is the designated protection and advocacy agency in Washington State. We are part of a network of agencies across the whole United States and work to uphold the rights of people with disabilities, to identify and intervene in situations where abuse and neglect is occurring. So with our federal mandates comes an access authority, which means that we can go anywhere people with disabilities are being served, such as jails and institutions. In my role as public policy liaison, I support our public policy work, really work directly with community members to support their advocacy efforts, and as a really significant part of that, engage in a lot of voting access work to really ensure that our community's voices are meaningfully heard in the policymaking process.
Thank you. And finally, Gabriela.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be here and be part of this conversation. And I have a great respect for Representative Farivar and for Sunshine and the work that she's doing with Disability Rights Washington. As the mother of a child with intellectual and developmental disabilities, it's so important to me to be sure that our community is included, fully included in voting and exercising their civic right to vote. And we have seen a lot of exclusions, limitations, and things that prevent our community with disabilities to fully participate in voting. And I have been an advocate for self-advocates and families since so many years. I can't even remember when I began, but I've done this work in 3 different states, the state of California, Oregon, and Washington, and the longest here in the state of Washington since 2008. And I just think that our community needs to be included instead of excluded. And that's why I do this work. And so thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
We're really grateful to have you all join us, especially with your state and national level expertise, all of you. This is an important conversation that's happening in a lot of spaces. And for us, inclusion is really important. And, you know, as we work to expand our democracy, we want to make sure the whole goal is to make it accessible, inclusive of everyone, really. So the question I had you all touched a little bit around how the voting justice interacts with disability advocacy. You can feel free to expand on that question a bit, but I'm also wondering why you support ranked choice voting and how ranked choice voting is connected to disability justice. Maybe we can start with Sunshine this time, and then Gabriela, then Darya. Sorry, Representative Darya.
Sure. Thanks, Nilu. Well, I support ranked choice voting because it addresses a really significant issue of disenfranchisement. The ability to vote is really foundational to the idea of nothing about us without us. And for many of us, it is not only a fundamental right, but really our access to power and decision-making processes. In disability advocacy, we talk both about disability rights and disability justice. So disability rights focuses more, I think, on the legal protection side of things, whereas disability justice really brings into conversation that true equity requires addressing multiple forms of oppression, and I think really tackling those deeper systemic and interconnected issues that create inequality. So in the context of voting, initiatives like ranked choice voting really make the electoral process less disempowering. It reduces the pressure to vote strategically and elevates candidates who I think really prioritize the needs of our community. So ultimately, I think this really falls in line with disability justice because it creates a more inclusive democratic process and allows us to participate in a way where our choices and our voices are really heard.
Thank you. I agree. I do think we have seen that it brings more people able to run and actually to win. Gabriela?
Yes, thank you, Nilu. If we think about voting justice and disability advocacy, there's a what I've seen in my years of experience supporting individuals and families with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's a misperception about people with disabilities not voting. People think that because they have a disability, they cannot vote. But a little that they know is that our IDD community, and that's an abbreviation for intellectual and developmental disabilities, our IDD community is very knowledgeable when it comes to issues like the candidates, like the things that are for or against, and they are very involved in the process for advocacy, just like SAIL. So that was the organization that started the movement for Nothing About Us Without Us. They are very active and they are advocates for exercising their right to vote. And with the same mindset, the state of Washington actually passed a law 2 years ago for a more inclusive guardianship process and support decision making. And I'm actually have about a year collaborating with the Supreme Justice Court for the state of Washington to make this process more inclusive. So people with intellectual and developmental disabilities do have the right to vote, obviously, when they have the capacity to do that. So the guardians cannot take their right to vote and to exercise this is a right that they have. So to me, it is it goes hand to hand, the voting justice and advocacy, because if they cannot say what candidate they want to be elected, but also if we put limitations on how they will vote, then we're not being inclusive. We are disenfranchising them from voting and from choosing. And ranked choice voting is a very inclusive way to vote, not only for, it's for everybody. So if we take this option for people with disabilities, then we are telling them that they don't have the capacity to do that when they do. And who are we to tell them they cannot do something? We are excluding them from this process. So it's kind of like, why would you take something away from them? If we take advantage of the things that they came to us, thanks to them, like let's say when you go to a convenience store and you have the automatic doors opening for you, it wasn't made for us. It was made for people with disabilities, and we take advantage of that. So that means that only they will have the way to enter a facility with automatic doors only for them and for us will be different. So where will they make that difference, right? So the same thing for voting. Why will we do those changes to prohibit them from accessing ranked choice voting and to have the same possibilities? I think is, so that's what I think.
Thank you. I love that invitation to be part of this process in every single way, from implementation and standards, but also to actually voting. Like, we want everyone here. Darya, and then after this, we'll probably change more into a conversation. So if you want, I can repeat the question, but I assume you're probably ready to go.
I'm ready to go. So I want to uplift something really important that Gabriela said, which is that folks with disabilities, I'm going to say in particular, the developmental disability community is some of the most organized and effective advocates that you see in the legislature, right? If you have the ability to show up in the legislature and navigate that process and be able to participate in that capacity, voting is something that you're already doing. Voting is something that's already routine for you. Like, look at us. Like, I'm a political wonk, right? If you are showing up in the legislative process, you're most likely some sort of a political wonk, and this is interesting and exciting to you, and you're showing up. And so I think that's important, that folks with developmental disabilities already have the right to vote. They are already voting, and they're doing much more complicated advocacy than just voting too. I also want to uplift the importance of ranked choice voting in representation. I'll say in my run for office in particular, I wish that ranked choice voting was an option in that race. I wish for all races it was an option, but I'll say my race in particular. As a young woman of color from immigrant parents who lives in a lower income community, doesn't have a big affluent network, something like ranked choice voting could have been an absolute game changer for me. I'm lucky, and I pulled through with the support of a incredible community that wanted to make sure that the representation I bring is in office. And I have also seen candidates with different types of disabilities absolutely put through the ringer when they're running for office themselves. If I had a tremendous amount of barriers, like I did, just imagine how difficult it could be with someone with all sorts of different types of disabilities to run for office. I think, as Sunshine said, we need to elevate candidates who are really prioritizing our community, which means bringing in people who have a more diverse experience. It takes a lot of energy and stamina to go and knock on doors. It is really hard. It is very difficult for candidates with disabilities to be able to navigate sometimes all of the social interactions, for example, that come with running on a campaign. It's emotionally exhausting. It's a lot to go through. And I think the other thing that really needs to be said is that candidates with disabilities face ableism on the campaign trail. They do in a really significant way, and I've seen it firsthand. And that ableism that they experience, it perpetuates this idea of viability politics, which is just another reason why we need to have ranked choice voting, right? Just because you have a disability, it does not mean that you can't be an advocate. It does not mean that you can't be a candidate, and it certainly does not mean that you can't vote.
Thank you. And speaking to that, we know ranked choice voting helps bring focus on the issues and, actually focus on the priorities and platforms. And it's awesome to be able to elevate people with real experience and understanding in those conversations. So not only are they showing up and advocating, but they're the real experts. And if we have elections where people actually have to focus on issues, I think we would all benefit in society from that. So thank you for highlighting that. A question just came in from the audience. I'm going to combine it with the question we had for you. John Morgan asks, is there evidence of voters with disabilities having trouble understanding our ballots now? Along with that, some opponents we're hearing are concerned that ranked choice voting will be too difficult for those with cognitive disabilities. Is there merit behind this claim? Why or why not? So are we seeing struggles with understanding our current ballot? Darya, you just spoke to that a little bit. And do we think that it will be too hard to engage with ranked choice voting? And remembering that for the voter, the experience is almost entirely the same. You just rank, which is something we all do today. If I asked everyone in the audience today, rank our backgrounds, do you love my flower more? Or, I think they'd be able to do it like this. So I'd love for this to be more of a conversation. So I'm just answer as you wish. Gabriela, if you want to kick it off, just to, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Nilu. I would say more difficult to understand to vote. Is that the main question? I think when something comes in our way and we are not familiar with it, we'll say it's difficult. But when we look at an example, how ranked choice voting works, it's very simple. And people with disabilities are very smart. Even nonverbal people with disabilities are very smart. And I know that because my own son was in that situation. So he could understand and follow the rules and make his own choices, even when he was nonverbal. So when we learn, so education has to be essential to me for everything. That's why candidates have campaigns, because they educate their constituents about what they are running for. So that's education, right? And so just the same way ranked choice voting or anything in the polls is about education, is the campaign. Why? Because they want to let people know what they stand for so they can attain their vote. So the same thing with ranked choice voting, I think, is a way for us to educate people so they can understand how does this process work. And if we see examples of ranked choice voting, and I will give a very simple example that I loved. When we choose, let's say we have 4 candidates and each candidate stands for, candidate 1, 2, 3, and 4, we like them in that order, right? But instead of saying candidates, we say ice cream flavors. Like, what's your best ice cream flavor? Chocolate, then strawberry, then probably dulce de leche, and then something else, right? So I will make my top picks, obviously in that order, the ones that I like. And if I go to the store and they don't have chocolate, then my other option is, oh, do you have strawberry? Because I know that I like strawberry. And if they don't have either of those, then my next choice is dulce de leche. And if I have a group of people that they vote for, we put all those flavors together, whatever flavors we like, and the choices are, let's say those 4 choices, and we pick our favorites, that's how ranked choice voting works. The top pick will be the winner, and then the second, and so forth. So it's not a difficult process. It's very easy to understand. And if we understand that process, believe me, they do understand it. Because people with disabilities are very keen to investigate and ask. And like Representative Farivar was saying, they do more complex things already in the legislature. And it wouldn't be an issue, because I have experience with self-advocates of all ages, from like 0 to probably the oldest person that I have supported in a process is like maybe 50. So I have that age range. It's very wide. And they're very capable of understanding this process, and they take things very quick. They pick it up really quick. So I let Sunshine or Representative Farivar jump in, and I don't know if you'd like to share anything.
Yeah, I think I want to start out by saying blanket statements like this can be pretty dangerous to prescribe to any population. And I want to say that that is especially the case when you are talking about what people can and can't do. Everybody is unique, whether or not you have a disability or not. And if you do have a disability, how your disability shows up is also unique. And what you need in life to be able to engage in the world that you want to be able to, in the way that you want to be able to, is also going to be unique. And I think whether or not you need an accommodation is not really a concern. People need accommodations to do any sorts of things, right? Whether you need an accommodation to get to the bus stop, whether you need an accommodation to participate in school, whatever it is, it's not anything bad or weird to be ashamed of, and that really needs to be said, right? It is just a different way of operating within this world. And whether or not people without disabilities, like myself, whether or not I call it an accommodation, sometimes I need some extra help to get things done, and that's okay too, right? I think that's a really important sort of level to set. Accommodations are not a bad thing. And I think this is why it's just important to educate people. Make sure that as we're trying new things, people have the information they need to be successful. And I also want to stop and say, how many of you understand every single thing on your ballot every time? Because if you do, you're a superstar, and I think out of the ordinary, right? How many of you like need to go home and look things up to understand what the heck that initiative said to make sure you vote the way that you want to, right? How many of you don't know what a candidate stands for and have to go do a little bit of extra research or talk to your friends or go to wherever to get more information? That's all a method of getting extra support, and that is perfectly fine. We don't know everything. We can't have every skill possible out there, and I think that's okay. We're just saying, give us a little bit of extra, all of us, right? Because not only is, I think, our current system, which hopefully Sunshine will talk about in a minute, confusing and difficult to access for people with disabilities, but also myself sometimes, and probably some of you sometimes, right? Everyone's going to need a little bit of help if we switch to a new system. That's just the way it's going to be. And that's okay. You can be a little bit confused in the beginning, get the information that you need, practice a couple times, think about the other contexts in your life, like Gabriela said, ice cream flavors, movies, really anything. For a lot of people, I think this idea that you have to just pick one absolute thing can actually be harder than saying like, okay, well, this is how I feel about these things in this order. And so, you know, I'll end there. I'll stop there.
And this is Sunshine. I really agree first with what Gabriela and Representative Farivar said. I mean, I really think that like learning anything new, ranked choice voting is going to pose some challenges for everyone. And I think this concern highlights for me not the pros or cons of ranked choice voting, but rather the importance of really intentional and robust education efforts and support in any voting system or reform effort. I mean, I think it was both Gabriela and Representative Farivar earlier talking about how disability does not automatically mean that we can't understand something, that we can't be advocates or informed voters or even candidates. And education and support also doesn't mean that ranked choice voting should be delayed. I think that what it really means is that we need the right information going out to voters to be fully prepared. So clear instructions, accessible resources, access to proper assistance. All of these are challenges that can be effectively addressed. I recognize that I don't represent the diverse needs and experiences of all folks in the developmental disability community, but as an autistic person and as somebody who also comes from a family of immigrants, our current voting system is confusing and it is disempowering. I mean, a large part of my work is around voting advocacy, and I myself have sometimes not turned in my ballot because I couldn't pick just one candidate, or I was completely unable to access the information that I needed to feel like I was making an informed vote. And that's why I'm doing this work and why we are in this space this evening, because our current system is inaccessible. And I think instead of assuming that disability automatically precludes an understanding of ranked choice voting, we need to be focusing on providing the necessary support to ensure that everyone, disabled or non-disabled, are able to participate fully and confidently. I think this concern really should not distract from the fact that ranked choice voting is going to give us ultimately more choice and voice in our elections.
Yeah, thank you. That speaks a little bit to John's question about whether we see hurdles already to the community, and that's exactly the work that you do, and we can work on that. And really, as Darya, Representative Farivar said, everybody sees this. I have experienced these same challenges and have had to go ask for help and support from people too. And speaking to that, our Ann Croker asks, will you or have any of you addressed our Secretary of State's objections with him? She presumes so, but she's just checking. I do know actually a little bit of that answer, but I'll let you answer if you all have or not. And then along with that, I'm going to say, what can we do to make sure voting is accessible to voters with intellectual differences and disabilities, and whose job is that? So I'll leave that for you all to answer.
Hi, this is Gabriela. So, no, I have not reached out to Secretary of State to address these comments that he has made. And what was the second question? Sorry.
What can we do to make sure voting is accessible to voters with intellectual differences and disabilities, and whose job do you think that is?
Thank you. Sorry, like I mentioned when I joined the meeting, let's talk about Representative Farivar was saying about accommodations. Thank you for accommodating me being in this meeting in my car. Like I shared previously, my son had an emergency dental surgery. And thank you for allowing me to be in my car doing this, and thank you for the accommodation. See, so I believe that education is a big part of not only ranked choice voting, but any voting for our community. And the responsibility is actually for our Secretary of State, because education goes to everybody. And just like we are informed how about the elections, the voting, the candidates, the same way there needs to be education about ranked choice voting, because we cannot assume people know what ranked choice voting means if we don't talk about it or if we don't show them how it works. So we cannot assume for anybody not for people with neurodivergent or people, neurotypical people or anybody. So education, just like we need how to learn how to read and write and do math and everything. We were not born learning everything, so we had to go to school to learn those things. So just the same way, education for ranked choice voting is essential. And because we are in a state that we speak over 100 languages, me as being an immigrant and English as my second language, I know that Spanish is not the only language, the only second language in this country, but I know it's the largest second language spoken. But that means that we have many other languages in our state. So there has to be education in the languages that are needed for voters to be fully included in this process. And also with that education, with those languages, we will be addressing inclusion for everybody, for all our communities. And that will address the information for everybody, including people with intellectual or mental disabilities or physical disabilities. So our state is on charge of that. So I'll be happy to reach out to Secretary of State and have that conversation. Thank you.
This is Sunshine. Just to build off of that, I would say that in terms of addressing access issues to the electoral system, what comes to mind for me is clear, easy to understand voting materials. I mean, this is still true for our current voting system, including campaigns. I think that it's really important that I don't recall who mentioned it earlier, but as campaigns are one of the most significant ways in which voters have an opportunity to educate themselves on candidates, it's really important that those two are accessible. I think our mail-in ballot system is great, and there needs to be an accessible way to return those ballots for voters for whom the mail-in system is inaccessible. I know that some states, for example, do online voting, and then also, I mean, engaging in community outreach and making sure that you are hearing directly from our community to understand what those barriers are. And as Rep. Farivar mentioned earlier, our experiences are diverse and unique, and my experiences and needs don't necessarily reflect the needs and experiences of everyone else in my community. And I think it's really important to have an understanding of the barriers directly from folks who are most impacted. In terms of whose job this is, I mean, I think everyone involved in the electoral process shares the responsibility for ensuring that voting is accessible and inclusive, but especially election officials at all levels. I think that if there is a concern about ranked choice voting, that underscores a responsibility to address the issues identified rather than assuming that those challenges are simply insurmountable. I think there may be challenges, but it is really worth it to ensure that everyone is included in the process.
I think that's right. I think that the responsibility is with everyone, and specifically the state elections office, and specifically I think with local elections officials as well. I will say that this was thought about structurally and in statute, actually. Did you know that we are required to have a disability advisory council for every elections office? Every county is supposed to have a disability advisory council for their elections department, and most don't have it. There is not currently a way to enforce this in statute, and this is something that I think DRW in particular has been trying to spread the word about for a long time. I will say that I used to be a part of the King County Disability Advisory Council for the Elections Office, And there is some really interesting, innovative work happening in that advisory council. Not only does King County have a great elections director, I'll just say, but when you get people with lived experience together to talk about the challenges, guess what? People have no shortage of things to say and solutions to offer. So if we're trying to figure out how our elections bodies are supposed to support people with IDD, just go ask them. Bring them on to your advisory council, and they will amaze you with the ideas that they are bringing to the table. I will also address the question about talking to the Secretary of State's office. I will say that most of my conversations about that office have been focused on current challenges to the system and trying to figure out how we can address barriers currently. But I think that is about to change. I think I'll have the opportunity to have a lot more conversations with the Secretary of State here soon. And I think one of the things I really want to make sure of, because really my guiding principle is nothing about us without us, I want to make sure that he can hear it from people with disabilities themselves, the people that he is talking about that he doesn't believe are able to participate in the system because they can't. So I will just say strategy coming soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's why we wanted to address his comments that he's been making. I also want to acknowledge that Disability Rights Washington did provide testimony in response to these comments in legislature last session, which we really appreciated, because we don't want to be the ones speaking over anyone and speaking for them. And we hope this can be a continuing conversation that, you know, we have more questions. I'm sorry we can't get to them in the audience. And the idea that this is a space that just has a broad statement that anybody can make is not welcoming to me as somebody who does have family members with intellectual disabilities, and also, you know, daughter of immigrants whose my first language wasn't actually English, and I have had accommodations. And Gabriela, I'm super happy to accommodate you in the car, because that's the idea of community and bringing everybody in. I mean, that would exclude mothers if we weren't or parents, I should really say, if we weren't making these kinds of accommodations throughout our lives. So one thing I want to throw out really quickly is a question came out from David Kurlick about is there things we can learn from Ireland and Australia, who have been voting using ranked choice voting. I was just in Ireland observing their elections, and so we are looking to learn from them and bring that here. And their access was a conversation that happened there, and we will continue to have this conversation. So thank you for being here. I'm going to throw one last conversation out, because we really appreciate all the work that you're doing and showing up. And we want you to share with our audience, who presumably are really interested in this work. We had a huge turnout tonight. Thank you everybody for being here. But if we want to get involved in your cause, how can we do that? Is there a website you want us to share, or anything you want to throw out for us this evening before we let you all go? We know you're all busy. Thank you.
Well, this is Sunshine. I'll just jump in here really quickly, because this question's coming at a great time. There are lots of opportunities to be involved. I believe DRW's boards and councils are still looking for members. That is a great way to make sure that our work is being led and informed directly by community members. If folks are interested in working a little more directly with me, I support the Cross Disability Advocacy Network. And folks are welcome to reach out to me if they are interested in getting involved in legislative and voting advocacy. I know that the Disability Advisory Council is working particularly closely on elections issues right now. And right now in particular, there's a really big ongoing effort that will determine how we at DRW spend our time next year. So if this is an important issue to you, or if you have other issues impacting the disability community that you want to make sure that we are aware of, I'll put a link in the chat on a survey to weigh in on our priority setting process. And then I'll also include my email if folks are interested in getting involved with some of the other groups.
Hi, this is Gabriela. How you can get involved with that? So, our webpage is www.pasitosgigantes.org. I'll put that in the chat. It's a little challenging if Spanish is not your first language. I'll put our website in there. And the work that we do is not only in Clark County, but is throughout the state of Washington. We support minorities, BIPOC, immigrants, and refugees. And the work is intense, let me tell you. So we always can use volunteers to share information, to be informed, and to spread the word when there's some information that our community can take in and be fully informed, like ranked choice voting or disability rights or anything else that comes in our way, immigration, whatnot. So yeah, that's a way to the community can support our organization, and also to be more inclusive with our self-advocates, no matter what age, and to be more understanding. Sometimes we hear about acceptance, but we don't hear much about inclusion. So we need to be more inclusive with our community throughout the state and the country and beyond, because when we include everybody in the conversation, when we include everybody in the community, we are truly being part of the community. And I think that's wonderful, being the mother of a child in the autism spectrum and an advocate for a numerous number of self-advocates and families. Let me tell you, that's probably the biggest challenge for the school system, for the laws that we advocate with the legislature at the state and national level are quite intense. And sometimes it's very hard to come across with the representatives and that we have, because they want to hear more from the community. How they need to be helped or included or supported, and bringing those stories to our representatives is essential. So that will be the way to support our community with intellectual and developmental disabilities and non-intellectual and developmental disabilities. So yeah, thank you. I'll put the website on the chat.
And this is Darya. I guess I'll say support these two wonderful organizations doing great work. And reach out to me if I can ever be helpful, if you ever want to talk. I think you all mostly know where to find me, but my email is my first name, darya.farivar@leg.wa.gov. Very happy to talk with folks on any issues that might be of interest to them. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you. We're really grateful to be able to bring you all here tonight to speak on this topic, and we see you as important partners in this work. And I didn't acknowledge that it's also our job to make sure we're doing educating and advocating and working to implement, and we own that and are grateful for that. So I am going to hand it back to Carrie, I believe. So thanks all.
All right, thank you all so much. This was such an awesome conversation. I just feel like we learned a lot, and I'm so grateful for all of the work that you all do in community and bringing us together to really make sure that we are doing this together. So much of ranked choice voting is about increasing opportunity and making sure that there are more options for us on the ballot. And we really do mean everybody. It's a special part of working at Fair Vote Washington. We really run the full range of political gamut and needs in our community. So thank you all so much for being here. And thanking you, Lou, for walking us through. I also just want to make a quick shout out and call to action in our chat for Fair Vote Washington. We have heard so much about how much community is needed in getting the message out. And it really starts with us. It starts with the folks on this call. We spend our summers talking to everyday people at fairs and festivals and markets and at community events to make sure that we are talking to people in our communities about their needs and about the promises of ranked choice voting. So I just want to call attention to that in the chat. And Nilu, I'm going to thank you, and then I'm going to pull on Colton, who is a super volunteer of ours. He is joining us from Bellingham today. And thank you so much, Colton, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Carrie. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So that's my direct segue from we need volunteers to let's hear from a volunteer. What is it like? Colton, we're going to keep this short and sweet tonight, but I'd love to start with just a rumor that I've heard about you, that you love tabling. I've heard that you really like to table, that you really love to talk to voters. Can you address this rumor that I've heard?
Yeah, it is true. I'm a big fan of tabling. I enjoy talking with people. Ranked choice voting is cool thing to table for. And I've been doing it for a little while, and it's been a ton of fun. So what's going on with it?
Awesome. Can you tell us where you first learned about ranked choice voting and why did you choose to get involved with Fair Vote Washington? We're so stoked that you're this awesome volunteer, but where did it come from?
Yeah. So I first heard about ranked choice voting like shortly after the 2020 presidential primary. Washington is like one of the last states that gets to cast their vote in the primary, and so quite a few candidates drop out before then. And I was one of those people that I had filled out my ballot, I had sealed it, had it in the car ready to drop off, and like a few days before the deadline, the candidate I was supporting had dropped out. And I kind of had to begrudgingly go in there and like rip it open, scratch out the old one, and tape it back together and get it in. It just looks super sketchy. Like someone definitely took another look at that and was probably going to throw it out. But it frustrated me, right? It frustrated me that we had a system where that was common, and it frustrated me even more that I had like talked to other people that had a very similar thing happen to them, but they had submitted their ballot after the candidate that they wanted to go, to support had dropped out. And so in a way, their vote, was kind of wasted in a little bit of a way, right? And it was frustrating that we lived in a system like that. So I did a bunch of research and kind of came across this idea of ranked choice voting and really clicked with it. But then I kind of took a backseat for a few years. I graduated college, got involved with some other organizations. But very recently, I kind of got pulled back into the fold. Whatcom County, where I live, is a home rule charter county. So every 10 years, we get a bunch of people together to recommend changes to our county charter. And last time we did this cycle 10 years ago, their ranked choice voting was on the ballot or on the their docket essentially, and it failed by one vote. And so there's been all this conversation of, hey, this is a really good time. There's a chance that we could really do this in the county. And so, I kind of got roped back in, and I've been kind of, trying to do what I can to make it happen with a bunch of incredible, really cool volunteers as well. So definitely not taking credit for all the work they've done before to get us to this point. So yeah, I'm engaged and back in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Can you tell us your favorite part about volunteering with Fair Vote Washington? I know that obviously you're doing a lot of tabling, but you're also doing a lot of work for the County Charter Review Commission elections. What are your favorite parts about volunteering for ranked choice voting?
Yeah, I've done a lot of door knocking over the years. I've done a bunch of tabling for different causes, different organizations. And I feel like ranked choice voting is by far has to be like the funnest and coolest thing that I've ever been involved with in this sort of capacity. It's like I mentioned before, it's a product that's sells itself. I really enjoy, tabling because it gives me an opportunity to talk with people, and educate them. And it's really cool, when you can kind of flag someone down that's a little apprehensive. You kind of don't want to talk to you, but you're a little pushy, so you get them in. And then in the in the span of like a 45-minute conversation, you kind of break down what it is, and you can kind of pinpoint some of the frustrations that they're having. And you can see their whole attitude change, and they can light up. And you get people that like want to sign up to stay involved, like right in there. And like I've had people that have gone from not knowing what ranked choice voting was to making a donation at the table in one conversation. And I never worked with an organization or for a cause where that happens, at least to the same frequency that this sort of thing happens with ranked choice voting. Like it's a no-brainer for a lot of people. And it's so cool to have an opportunity to work on something that like gets an immediate buy-in like that, unlike a lot of other things that you can work on, when you're working in this sort of thing in government. So that's why I enjoy it. It's a product that sells itself. People are super excited about it, and it like fixes this very fundamental problem and frustration that a lot of people have but can't quite articulate.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Thank you so much for that. All right, last question. If somebody has never volunteered with Fairvote Washington before, what would you say to them? What are your words of wisdom?
Yeah, never volunteered with the organization as a whole. Yeah, I would say it can be kind of intimidating to jump in on these sorts of things, especially when we're talking about tabling, right? Or door knocking or anything like that, right? Like, oh, I have to show up and be face to face with somebody, right? And what if I don't know all the answers, and what if I lock up and embarrass myself, right? Like when I was jumping in for the first time and getting involved, with tabling, I had a lot of those sorts of concerns. But I would assuade people about that, kind of like what I noted before. This is something that a lot of people are very passionate about, and I think if you're a little on the fence, like of all the things that you could be working on right now, like from a best bang for your buck, put in time, like how it helps our system, is like one of the best returns on investment for your time, like in terms of like fundamentally changing our system in a way that makes our government better. Like there's few things you could do that are like as impactful as this.
Thank you so much. I could not agree more. I'm going to let you go, but please join us tabling. We have lots of events coming up this summer. We have lots of opportunities to get involved and stay involved. We are not going anywhere anytime soon, and we hope you join us. That said, I also want to really drive home that we are the only organization leading the charge on ranked choice voting in Washington. And we do need your support, both at the tables, at the doors, but we also need your financial support. The work that we do is long-term. It takes resources to really move us through. So if you would please consider donating a couple of dollars. You can join in at the $3 donation. You can make it monthly if you want. And you can make it more than $3 if you want as well. But we really are grateful for your support in all of the ways that you show up for us here at Farivar, Washington. We have a really incredible team of people who read our emails, who come to our events, who showed up at Lobby Day last year. And it is because of all of you that we can talk to our legislators, like Representative Farivar here tonight, about the importance of ranked choice voting and about how it solves many of our common issues. But the work is not free. Democracy, freedom is not free, and this does take work. So we'd appreciate you considering joining us and supporting us through a financial donation tonight. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you again to Representative Farivar, to Sunshine Cheng, and to Gabriela Mendoza We could not be more grateful to be in partnership and community with you all. We could not be more grateful for the advocacy that you do and to be included in your work. So thank you all so much.